Welcome back to the channel, IndigoAngel. Come on into this dimension and come on into a Guardian update in which I have high-level intel information regarding several enactments and events in which occurred throughout galactic history. According to the first galactic fall over 550,000 years ago BCE on this Earth, but essentially the timeline goes much further into this universal time matrix, but this is when the first accounts were essentially recorded and installed into particular records in certain systems, some on this planet and some off, and where certain things have been basically scribed. So the first galactic fall, which accounts for the fall of Avion, the Lyran Holocaust, and the original Draco Hydra War, everything occurring within the original Hydra Draco War, which encompasses the first galactic fall. This erupted from this war, resulting in the destruction of Avion, a planet within the Lyra Vega system and the original host of the angelic human 12-strand DNA template, as this is what the Dracos covet and ultimately seek to destroy. As this war unfolded on Earth, this was considered the original and first Stargate hijack on this planet. This occurred at Stargate 10 and the Fall Dismantled Harmonic Universe 2, initiating the first collapse of divine blueprint transmission routes across galaxies. Now, there were many key events that occurred during this time: the invasion of Lyra, the annihilation of Avion, the breakdown of the Emerald Order transmission and grid, and the WISA systems were essentially plugged in. This was the beginning of the first phase of the black hole reversal field incursions, and also the destruction of Hydra gateways and the Seraphim Holy Womb Gate networks, essentially. These were collapsed. The Hydra biomes were collapsed on this Earth, along with the Seraphim soul lines. This was the original activation of the forced hybridization force breeder programs on the planet, and this was temporal displacement mechanisms that targeted Hydra, Magdalene lineage holders, essentially, and many others as well. So this information is coming forward because it's crucial at this time for those of us to basically understand the importance of the Guardian Alliance in this greater mission to recover the Earth out of the controllers of the predatorial and invasive species lines that have dominated and essentially have hijacked this planet as a breeding planet. So I want to get in with you guys today and talk more about how the Hydra Draco Wars essentially ripped through the Orion Arm and tore open dimensional rifts and collapsed the stability of the entire star sectors within the Orion system. And what began as a covert gate infiltration escalated into a campaign of womb warfare that was targeting of planetary reproductive architecture and the reversal of ley line currents and the erasure of ancient spiritual covenants. And so, if you want a little bit more backstory on all of this, please go back and watch a video I put out a month ago called High Level Intel Galactic War of Hydra and Draco First Earth Stargate Hijack 12 Feminine Councils. I do go into my personal memory and account of these Hydra records and Hydra Wars, that not containing all of the information, but containing enough to help you to fill in the blanks. So there was two key objectives in which drove the Draco invasion. And the first objective was the quest of the Vault of Orion. The Dracos wanted to covet the Vault of Orion, a crystalline celestial record vault that contains the complete and uncorrupted history of Earth, her stargates, and all guardian genetic lineages. This archive exists outside of linear time, immune to AI mimicry and historical revision, in which the Dracos did not know this at first. They did not know that it was immune to AI mimicry. So this vault was essentially protected, and it was placed in points that were scattered across multiple planetary networks. including areas on this Earth in which the Vault of Orion is essentially located. One of those locations essentially being in Germany, and I have spoken about this before. The Rygelian Draco factions sought to close these Earth access points and weaponize the vault, using its records to map and dismantle Guardian strongholds, but unable to entirely covet entirely the entirety of the records inside of that vault. Therefore, they've worked to fight over areas in which contain the actual vault records itself. Another thing in which drove the Draco invasion was the Kryptonite core of Draco power. And this was the Kryptonite rock that they possessed. A black crystalline meteorite mass held within the Theban Draco dynasties, a massive rock of dark worship, and designed to maintain their dominance in this universe by feeding on planetary life force currents and suppressing the Christos Sophia plasma flows on this planet. And after these two possessions were essentially coveted, the first blow in this campaign was that they struck at Stargate 10 and they anchored in its original form at Mount Hermon in the Holy Lands, a central node on the planetary Northern Cross. And the Northern Cross has a lot to do with the Draco invasion overall, as the way in which they have harnessed this Earth to entrap it as a force breeder planet essentially is to was to hijack the lower three stargates and regions of the planetary Northern Cross. This was Mecca, Kaaba Mecca, this was Giza, and this was Abadan, Iran. Okay, and so essentially they hijacked the three lower gate systems in the planetary Northern Cross. This gate was the primary conduit for Venusian plasma into Earth's meridian grids, sustaining the harmonic bridge between Earth and Venus, which is necessary for us to hold enough harmonics high enough to keep us in a quantum continuum of 12D Earth vibrational frequency. The Draco inserted false frequency architecture. Black hole siphons laced, okay? And yes, lace, because they do use actual things like acid and other types of methods to essentially insert this false frequency architecture. Also, black goo, which is a form of acid, with AI coded overlays corrupting the current until the bridge began to collapse. This is how they collapse. So, with the Venus Earth plasma bridge destabilized, Earth was displaced from her twin, and the Hydra Womb Gate Stargate, one of the central Mother Arc anchors, was hijacked and eventually collapsed under the Regalian Draco invasion. And the Orion Arm destabilized, and the Ryel and Betelgeuse essentially also fell into this inversion. So, along with the collapse of Avion, Ryel and Betelgeuse also was essentially overtaken and overthrown by Draco. So the Hydra councils were unable to hold their planetary grid in full capacity and invoked the Covenant of Origin, calling all of the allied guardian nations into unified action. And they would preserve one last untouched jewel in the Orion sector, and this was the Mintacan system. I get a lot of emotions coming forward as I say this right now because this was Hydra's gift to humanity, was through the Waters of Ashlesha. And how Hydra essentially preserved this system was they accessed Mintaka's crystalline lattice that had been seeded in the first creation cycles by the Seraphim Elohai original Stargate builders as a harmonic stabilizer for the Orion Stargate network. And unlike Ryel and Betelgeuse, they chose Mintaka because Mintaka retained. It was the only Stargate system in the Orion sector that retained its original living source encryption, making it unreachable without the Covenant signatures. And so, to secure it as headquarters of the Guardian Alliance, Hydra enacted the greatest act of covenant exchange in recorded galactic history, and she poured her primordial womb waters, the original waters of Ashlesha, into Mintaca's crystalline oceans, saving the planet of Mintaca essentially. They also tried to save Alnatak and Alnilam as well, and these systems are mostly water planets as well, but also in some areas not, because they are essentially deserts. Okay, and there is no resources available in those sectors. But Mintaka could carry and hold the waters, and it carried the Sophia Serpent Mother codes embedded um, with the original Edenic creation and the resurrection codes for the planetary feminine body. And so, in this infusion, Mintaka became a water planet of living covenant, a reservoir of Hydra star nursery songs, and a womb for the resurrection of planetary mother arc networks, the central node sustaining the guardian councils across harmonic universes. And how this became official in the Guardian Alliance records was that they initiated it through a Mintakan seal. And this seal was locked through a triune light locking system anchored by the Hydra serpent mothers of the outer solar passageway gates through the Alacia flame, through the Lyran high councils, through the 12D cradle pillar into the god worlds, and through the Andromedan harmonic bridges linking to the Aqua Seraphim realms. And with this seal in place in the Mintaka system, it became the command center for coordinating Earth's liberation timelines, mapping secure interdimensional corridors for the return of star lineages, and restoring fragments of the planetary Christos Sophia body through Stargate recalibration. When this time matrix is calling for Stargate recalibration, in which we are coming up on the timeline sectors in which this is being called for, 2026. Okay, so 2025 to 2028 is going to be a big, big timeline for Stargate correction on the Earth. It's coming from the inner womb chambers. It's coming from the guardian navigators and direct stellar reclamation waves, sequenced harmonic pulses carrying resurrection codes. This is what's coming in. This is what is clearing the war-torn timelines and the planet, the war-torn star systems and planetary grids, and restoring the degraded areas and fallen portions of the gate systems. And these waves are timed to cosmic alignments for maximum resonance with organic timelines buried beneath the artificial overlays on this planet. So it's a resurrection coming from the deepest within. And it is coming through the throne of the eternal mothers and the Hydra star seeds and the Hydra Akashic waters. Remember that Mintaka is a throne of the eternal mothers because Mintaka carries the waters of Ashlesha and has become a convergence point where all Seraphi, Seras, and Elohim Elohai, Oraphim soul lines may gather without distortion or destruction. And everything here is the angelic record keepers, where they walk freely among the living archives of every guardian protected world in the Mintakan system. And so this is a very charged and unbroken tone of the source accord, a tone that the Draco cannot essentially counterfeit because there is massive protection zones around the Mintakan system. But because of this, the Guardians are orchestrating the return path, restoring Earth's original design, reactivating the Venus-Earth plasma bridges, and this will be constructed from 2025 to 2028, ensuring that the Edenic template remains unerasable from the living memory of the cosmos. So this is very, very key as to the current state of the Orion system, in which I have been guided to bring forward this information even deeper for people to start to internally rebuild and repair the integral fields within the Orion system, because the Orion truth must be known. Orion is one of the most complex and battle-forged, strategically essential nations of the Guardian Alliance. So, if anybody's in fear of the Orion system, there's no need to be in fear, but it is for us to learn from the Orion system because they do represent where things will go on this planet if we are not aware of um, the division tactics, the war tactics, the shadow mastery, and the vast contested Orion constellation networks, and how it's carrying all of the distinct histories, genetic legacies, and war archives of our planet. Now, the purest seat within the Orion system is the original guardian seat of Mintaka. This is the eighth density sphere within the universal tree of life, within Earth's dimensional foundation and template. This is what upholds the eighth dimensional scaffolding of our sector of the galaxy in this time matrix. So this is very, very significant that the Orion Guardian Council of Mintaka is seen truly for what it is, that Mintaka is fully aligned to the Law of One and the custodians of the original blueprint for polarity transfiguration and duality restoration across the galactic body. And the Orion sector is amongst the most war-ravaged realms in the current universal time matrix. Okay, we only get fragments of this time matrix here in this on Earth. But Orion itself has endured successive invasions during the Hydra Draco Wars and later during the Draco Orion Wars. So the Draco invasion sequence then fell forward in this order. The first and most brutal takeover occurred in the Ryel system, once a crystallized water civilization of profound harmony, profound creation origin point. Ryel was essentially seized under full Draco AI command. And Ryel currently is now operating as a hyper aggressive, hyper predatorial, militarized, technocratic dystopia where cybernetic governance and autonomous war machines dominate the surface of this planet, of this star system, of the races that are still there, which most are not of organic life. Organic life in the Ryel system is nearly extinct. And without the particular small amounts of guardian shielding and intervention that is there, because not a lot of guardian intervention can ultimately fix this system right now. This was one that was 97% hijacked. Okay, the planet hosts forced hybrid breeding facilities. This is actually the outpost where forced breeder victims are essentially taken. And this is a direct portal to Nibiru. It hosted the Tothian original tribal hijack of Lemuria, the first forced breeder program, where they took many of the original 12D tribe holders, okay, the beings of Avion, and from Earth, and took them into Ryel and through to the portals to Nibiru. There's many points on Earth, point sectors in the Earth in which they draw through those portals, one being in Saudi Arabia and the Anunnaki ports, all containing within the hijacked region of the lower planetary Northern Cross. And so it is in Ryel and through the forced breeding facilities of Ryel to Nibiru that there are large-scale genetic modification programs designed to harvest and control all of the surviving populations. And this is what they essentially embedded through the Hydra biomes and original Stargates at Stargate 10 here on this planet. The next targeted system was the Betelgeuse system. Betelgeuse was then essentially transformed into a polluted aerial megacity that was suspended above a toxic planetary atmosphere. And the deep industrial smog hides a society that's living in basically very toxic pollutant level smog that is under constant draconian AI regulation. Okay, these are the most entrapped souls. This is where commerce and governance serve only the invaders, period. It functions as a genetic human farming headquarters for Earth source captives. Okay, many Earth hostages are in the Betelgeuse system. Original angelic human soul lines are almost entirely extinct here, except for those that are held as prisoners of Betelgeuse War, and with the few surviving living that are free in permanent exile. And they are currently being hunted. Then they encircled around Alnalam and Alnatak. Alnalam used to be a thriving culture. It was essentially reduced to a scorched wasteland and a lawless trade corridor, a brutal trade corridor. It is survival at best and a barter-based, violent, and disconnected from all organic planetary governance. It is a predatory exchange zone. This is where the most unthinkable ultimately is exchanged in the wastelands and at the edge of Orion's most unstable war regions. And the reason why those war regions are there is because they want to covet the Mintaka system. But again, there are safe zones that are placed that they can't access. There's essentially a seal there that they cannot, a guardian seal there that they cannot access. The next system that they wanted to hijack was Alnatak, which is also a water world that was attempted to be saved by the Hydra Ashlesha womb waters, but now resembles the dystopian survival conditions of Waterworld. And so the populations live in sprawling aquatic settlements with vast minimal resources and severe conflicts over those resources between surface dwellers and also undersea hybrids as well. Many beings being half human, half fish, half shark type genetic splices. Battles rage both above and below the oceans for access to limited land masses and ancient submerged technology. And many of the predatory aquatic beings ultimately came from the Alnitak system here on Earth. So this, over time, was a systemic collapse of the Orion system, and Draco forces dismantled the sovereignty of multiple Orion nations, fracturing this constellation into multiple interdimensional quarantine zones in which they have tried to translate many of that capacities here to this Earth. And so while Earth holds basically a singular quantum quarantine field in the fourth dimensional astral body of this planet to basically protect Earth from further corruption into the new Earth bodies, and even deeper into that dreamscape field, right? We talked about the invasion of the dream fields and how the Dracos are harnessing those dream fields to basically implant Stargate wormhole tethering devices and funnel them into black hole systems. A lot of this, though, is not going beyond the fourth dimensional astral body of Earth. Orion's system contains multiple active quarantine zones, unlike Earth, and each is sealed around specific planetary networks where they are constructed to contain AI spread within their time matrix. Yet these breaches occur frequently and they are constantly put under new regulations, constantly put under new quarantine zones, and some Orion regions already exist centuries ahead of Earth and fully realized draconian AI dystopias and synthetic hive worlds where assimilation is totalitarian and planetary sovereignty is non existent in many locations in the Orion sector. This is all very significant to understand the state of Orion, so that way people do not fear the interface with Orion and understand that that system is under a constant high strain of warfare and high level breach with draconian predatorial AI reptilian hybrids. And we have to understand that battle and that war and how these records are held within the Vault of Orion here on Earth for us to reclaim and restore the things that happened in the multiple galactic falls, basically through the Hydra Draco Wars, what ultimately is the backbone of what occurred in the Orion Wars. So this gives you some perspective going even beyond the Orion Wars. That this isn't coming from nowhere, that there was many invasions that occurred up until that point. In the first galactic fall, 550,000 BCE, the Orion Guardians supported the Lyran High Councils during the initial Hydra Draco expansion. Mintaka served as the primary command nexus for resistance operations, while Ryel became the first major Orion world to fall under AI dominion. And this is the struggle and the strife still between Earth and Venus, essentially, and the problem and the difficulty that we are having restoring these gate systems, and why this is the primary objective, again, going from 2025 to 2028. Now, during the second galactic fall, 178,000 BCE, during the Venusian reversal, Orion Guardians defended Earth and Venus's water creation matrices against Draco attempts to sever them from Mother Ark networks. And Betelgeuse was the fall in that period. It was the fall, and it was the reason why Betelgeuse ultimately became polluted aerial megacity that suspended over toxic planetary atmosphere. Betelgeuse essentially transformed into basically like an industrial sky fortress. And, those Betelgeuse starseeds that come from that system, they are beings that, struggle with the most darkness here on this earth, basically, because they're still like held to the I guess the shadow tethering to that system. Like it's still a part of their Akashic history, and they have to work through that darkness essentially to overcome that what's occurred in their home system. Right? And so we're like playing out that karma here on Earth. Now in the third galactic fall, 55,000 to 9,500 BCE, after the fall of Tara and the Atlantean flood, the Orion refugee waves entered Guardian-held territories, and Orion Guardians led AI extraction units and quarantine breach containment teams, stabilizing both Mintaka Command and Earth's grid systems. Now, this proclaimed and catalyzed and brought forward the entire entrance of the Guardian Alliance through Mintaka. And though Mintaca always honored the Guardian Covenant, it formalized high command roles within the Guardian Alliance and established all of this after the first Ryel breach. In the Orion Reclaimers encoded war archives, genetic immunity to AI override and mastery of shadow transmutation positioned them as indispensable for operations in occupied and high threat AI zones. Operating through the eighth sphere of the universal tree of life. They specialize in many different things, but one of the things that the Orion Guardians are bringing forward, and these commands are coming through headquarters of Mintaka, is for one, shadow mastery of the collective, engaging and transmuting the densest polarity fields within the galactic body, timeline intelligence, holding the complete encoded history of galactic genetics, guardian genetics, for all beings in this universal time matrix. The Vault of Orion, they're protecting this. Quarantine stabilization, patrolling and reinforcing seals within compromised Orion zones to prevent phantom matrix expansion, and also truth retrieval, dismantling false timelines, propaganda constructs, and AI inserted overlays from galactic records. So, this system is very important. Mintaka is one that can be trusted just for everyone's reassurance that this one is positioned in a way in which it kind of monitors um, from multiple locations on Earth. Not only from Mintaka, which is 8th Density Guardian Headquarters, a strategic intelligence hub for the Alliance, but also certain posts from the Ryel system and what they can still occupy and reclaim, which is, like I said, very limited because it is on the Draconian AI occupied warfront. But Alnilam, Alnatok, also here on Earth, Zion, China, Jerusalem and Israel, the Agartha Network, Giza, Egypt, Doha and Qatar, Iran, Iraq, Abadan, and the Mecca Saturnian Black Cube areas. This is a part of the overseeing councils that will again unfold over the next 3 years to reclaim certain territories and things like this. But the key and the message to all of this is that it's important that if you carry the embodiment of the Orion imprint, that you understand to carry the Orion code is to accept the mantle of reclaimer of lost worlds, keeper of truth within war zones, and forger of light through shadow. The Orion Guardians are the most battle-hardened defenders of the New Earth prophecy, and they are holding the line not only for Earth's liberation, but for the reclamation of entire galactic sectors from AI dominion, from AI Draco hybrid dominion. So it is imperative that the integral fields within the Orion imprint be restored at this time. And this is my message, a transmission that is Guardian approved and Guardian sealed in light. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will be back with more information.